welcome to Running Instinct. My name is Maxim, and this week I did HRV training, which you probably have never heard of, so I'll be talking about that today. What is HRV? First, we gotta know something about the nervous system, specifically the autonomic nervous system, which controls the involuntary functions such as heartbeat, digestion, and respiration, and the autonomic nervous system is made up of two complementary systems that we are interested in, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. First, you got the sympathetic one, which is your body's stress response, your fight or flight reaction, and it's on by default until the parasympathetic nervous system steps in. So the way I remember parasympathetic is to stop the sympathetic, and that's exactly what the parasympathetic one does, and it's the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. It puts the brakes on it, and it is associated with rest, relaxation, and digestion. So while the sympathetic nervous system stresses you out and gives you a higher heart rate, which isn't a bad thing, the parasympathetic nervous system calms you down and lowers your heart rate. What is all this leading to? Well, HRV, heart rate variability, is a quantitative measurement of the balance between these, which means it gives you a number that you could base off of. HRV stands for heart rate variability, so the number you get for measuring your HRV is the variability in the difference in time between one heartbeat and the next. So looking at what I drew here, you have the heartbeats, and there's a certain amount of time in milliseconds in the picture that passes between each heartbeat. It is naturally different for everyone. So try and put this simply, if you take the difference between the time between the first three heartbeats, 800 to 750 milliseconds, you get a variability of 50. And then you take the difference between the second and third heartbeat and the third and fourth, 750, 725, you get 25. Now, you had a difference of 50 and 25, so the average is about 38 rounding up. So your HRV heart rate variability is 38. Basically, it's the difference of differences. Why are these values important? Why is a high HRV good while a low HRV not so good? Well, if you have a low HRV, that means your heart beats at a very constant rate. Well, that also means that your autonomic nervous system is not very active. If your heart rate isn't changing and responding, then you're either dead or so out of it that somebody can jump scare you and you won't even flinch. Your heart rate won't move a muscle, I guess. On the other hand, if your heart rate variability is high, that means your body is in the zone. You are responding to outside stimuli at a high rate. If your variability is high, you can have a stressful moment where your sympathetic nervous system is doing fight or flight and your heart rate is super high, and the next moment your parasympathetic nervous system can calm you down, give you a breather, and let your heart rate go down. Basically, if your HRV is high, then your body is really good at switching between sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. What is the importance of all this? Well, studies show that an individual, or athletes in this case, ability to switch between the nervous systems can be a very good indicator and predictor of how well they perform, their mood, and their health overall. If you're able to respond better to your environment, especially in high-stakes situations like competitions, then you're better off. How do we apply this? Well, we can train our HRV, and guess how? Breathing exercises. I watched a few videos on HRV, and they talked about how experienced yoga instructors and monks or something have high HRV because they meditate, and this actually helped them keep their cool even under difficult situations like having needles stuck into them when they were experimenting on them to see how they would react. And how did they react? They stayed calm because they can control their reactions. Our breathing and heart rate are all kind of independent of each other usually, but when our respiration slows down, all these things synchronize, which is called coherence, which is a fancy way of saying you're in the zone. Your HRV will increase at this point, and you are ready to perform. To practice all this, all you have to do is 5 or 10 minutes of consistent deep breathing per day. This is called HRV training. So, who uses HRV? Athletes and ordinary people, as well as patients who need to calm down, I guess. And how do we measure it? So there are a few options of this. You can use phone apps like HRV for Training, which uses your camera to measure HRV. There's also an app called Elite HRV, which requires a compatible sensor like a polar chest strap or one of those fancy finger pinchers they use at the doctor's office. The option I used was the Apple Watch. I recently got an Apple Watch, and every morning as soon as I woke up, I opened the mindfulness app and did 2 minutes of deep breathing or so, and then once that was up, I did a minute or two of breathing with the heart rate monitor. Later, I can look into the health app and see my scores. I took those scores and from the time frame I woke up, of course, and I graph the data points on an Excel sheet so I can see the trends. It's probably better to have more data with this, but what you're looking at is for an increase in your HRV. It's not really about like a good or bad score, but instead you're comparing today's score to yesterday's, to last week's, or this week's, or whatever. Difficulties, of course, came at the start when I had to find some time to do this, as well as practice finding my own natural rhythm and figure out how to use the Apple Watch to track everything. But once I got started and found 5 to 10 minutes on working on my breathing, then things got rolling. And what did I learn? The main thing I learned was that this is a very, very minor thing that's hard to keep track of. You can start seeing results pretty quick when you say start doing a good warm-up before every practice. But HRV training is much more subtle, and it may take time to start noticing some things like stress levels. At the end of the week, when I was getting tired, I noticed that my HRV levels dropped. And once I had a small break, they came back up again, meaning I was ready for another tough day. Looking at the graph I made when tracking HRV, you can start to notice the trends as more days go by. So, although it's hard to notice, I would still recommend doing some kind of deep focused breathing every night. Maybe not to specifically increase HRV, but just to help fall asleep and wake up and kind of practice getting in the zone. That's it for this video. Check out the links in the description for more information on HRV and how to measure it using apps or devices. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next videos, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.